about tonight's live. It's the 4 types of husband, and tonight, not only will you discover what type of husband you have, but then what you can do, the steps you can take to help him become the man of your dreams, to help him become the man that God has designed and created for him to be. So wives, we have a very important task in helping God, cooperating with God to help our husbands. And so, the 4 types of husbands, I'm going to say it quickly here, and maybe you will identify. You have the husband who tries to solve all your problems. You have the one who runs away, runs the other directions when you have a problem. You have the one who's always ready with a lecture to give you a moral lesson. Because whatever you did, he can surely do it better. And then you have the husband who is teachable and who is willing to learn. So, you're going to find your husband, and we are going to figure out how we can, with the help of God, transform him into the man that I know he can become. So, husbands, wives, those who are together, I see you coming in here through the screen on my TV. Welcome, welcome. Grab your husband. If you're a husband, grab your wife, because it's going to be funny. It's going to be funny. You're going to identify yourselves husband, and then this is going to be such a great conversation starter for you and your wife, okay? Grab your papers, grab your pens, your notes. Use this time right now to share. Welcome those who are coming in. Share this with your family. Share this with your friends. And already start getting your questions ready. Get your questions ready. I hope you have tons of them, because this is going to be a good one. Okay, so 4 types of husbands. And if you do not spot your husband out, or maybe you see some characteristics but not all, let me remind you that husbands throughout your marriage, they can become different types. Remember how I often remind you that with love languages, we can change our love language. Why? Depending on the different phases or stages we are in life. For example, when I was early on in my marriage with Renee, one of my love languages was gifts. After River and Reed were born, our twin boys, it became acts of service. So you and I, we are malleable, we are flexible, and so the types can change over time. But today you're going to get an overview. In 1 hour, we're not going to be able to get into all the details, all the nuances of all of these types. But as I have worked throughout with couples through the Abundant Marriage course, this seems to be the top 4, okay? The top 4 types of husband that I have worked with. So here we go. The first one is Bob the Builder. The Bob the Builder husband. You've heard me speak about him before because, well, this is kind of a part of all of men. Men have this thing where they like to fix things with their hands. They are doers. They were created with this need to provide and to protect. Remember when God created Adam and he puts him in the garden? He doesn't have to work. Are you kidding me? He was just created by God. He's in this beautiful home, all of these fruit trees and vegetables and animals all around, and yet God gave him the task of naming the animals and tending and keeping the garden, and Adam felt blessed by this. He had a vocation. It wasn't a job, but it was a purpose. It was a meaning. It was something that made him feel alive. And men very much have this. In a group of men, if a bunch of men are together in a circle, and I often try and go to overhear their conversations, sooner or later, the first question, especially if it's men that don't know each other very well, the small talk amongst men is this: hey man, what do you do for a living? Right? What do you do with your hands is what they're asking each other. And so the Bob the Builder husband, he attempts to fix problems, to solve problems before understanding the full story. And as a wife, you can relate to how annoying and frustrating this can be. Few things, in fact, are more frustrating than you reaching out for your husband, for him to connect with you emotionally, for him to understand your feelings, to understand the full story, And instead, he tries to fix your problems, which at times translates to he's trying to fix you. So many wives, over and over and over again, Amanda, I'm just not even going to talk to him anymore because anytime I come to him with something that happened at work or at church or with my mother or my friend, etc., he always tries to fix it. I don't want him to fix it. I want him to listen. I don't want him to fix it. I want him to understand. This has been the statements of so many wives. And maybe you feel exactly like this wife. The wife who has the Bob the Builder husband. Now let me explain to you, and I'll use it with one of the stories of a couple that I worked with. And listen, again, remember, husbands, you can go through this Bob the Builder husband type. Renee is definitely a Bob the Builder in his own way. And so we had husband and wife, and wife starts to explain to husband some of the traumas that happened in her past. Well, husband becomes very upset in this situation. He is visibly shocked. He's upset. He's angered in the situation. And what do you think he does? He immediately is after to solve the problem. Men have a hard time seeing high emotions. In fact, men aren't very good with what we call emotional intelligence. What's emotional intelligence? The ability to give language to the way you feel and the ability to see the feelings of another and to understand. Men sometimes are kind of scared of their emotions for whatever reason. It can be a culture thing. It can be the way they were raised and feelings were kind of pushed to the side. There's a lot of my husbands who grew up in a very macho, family or society who crying is seen as weakness. And so surely men are ill-equipped to handle high emotions. And what happens is when they get married and their wives come and they're crying or upset, men want to do what? Well, they want to fix the problem that is beforehand. Even though the wives don't want fixing, they want empathy. They want understanding. And so what happens? The wife is explaining the story, the traumas in the past. The husband wants to fix, and he says this: I have two options for you. She was explaining how she was hurt by a man in her life. And here we are, the three of us are talking, and the husband looks to her. You have two options in your life. I could kill him right now, or you're just going to have to get over it. As you can imagine, in this moment, the wife is looking in absolute horror, right? She wants to go for his neck. What do you mean I have two options? You're either going to kill him or I need to get over it. Both of these options, both of the solutions that you just gave me are awful. They were quick fix solutions to such a deep-rooted, painful experience. And in this moment, of course, right? As I often tell you guys here, the symptom is not the problem. We need to dig and find the root of the problem. Why was this husband? Why this drastic approach? And so, of course, the wife starts to say, I don't want you to fix my problem. You're not even listening to me. Do you not see? I'm here trying and sharing something with you that's so vulnerable, that's so scary, that's terrifying. Ever since I was a little girl, I had to deal with this. And now I tell you, and this is how you're going to react. I knew you were going to do this. And then the wife, right, obviously has this reaction, which all of us can say, well, man, that's the reaction that I would have. He was so insensitive. And he was. But now let's try to, with new lenses, see the full story. So this husband in this moment, he's almost as shocked as she was when he gave her those two options. Kill him or you're going to get over it. Because he's thinking, I thought I just gave you a really great solution. I thought I showed you that I want to protect you, that I want to save you, that I want to be the hero. I'm willing to kill this man for you, right? This is the husband, so he's looking at me like deer caught in headlights. She's looking at me like I'm about to kill him before he even gets a chance to kill the man in the past who hurt me, and all eyes are on me. And so, in this moment, I look to the husband, and just with one question, I said, do you think, I'm having a hard time with this, but maybe you could help me. Remember, men like to fix things. They like to help. They are doers. And so oftentimes I'll say, Renee, can you help me with something? I know I can count on you because there's no one who could possibly do this as good as you. And that Renee, he almost becomes, taller. And he comes all puffed up, short of, yes, I can help solve the problem, right? And we kid around because he knows exactly what I'm doing, right? He knows I'm sort of setting him up, but it doesn't even matter. He knows I'm setting him up, and he still fulfills exactly what I want him to do, which is help solve this problem, solve this situation. And so what happens is I look to the husband and I say, I need you to help me with something. And he already is like getting himself ready, right? You need me to help you with something? Like, sure, I can do it. I can manage it. And I said, do you think you can help me with something? Yeah, man, I can help you. What's the problem, right? What's the problem? I can fix it. He's the Bob the Builder husband. This is the type that I'm dealing with. And I said, do you think you can help me put words to what your wife is feeling right now? And he looks at me and he says, sure. She's feeling lonely and she's feeling afraid and scared and maybe vulnerable. Maybe she's thinking that after sharing this with me that I will look at her differently. And the wife just begins to sob. And she says, that's exactly how I'm feeling. And the husband is confused again. He goes, wait. All I told her was how she's feeling, and why am I getting a better reaction out of this than when I try to fix her problem? And here's why. The husband understood that in the moment, understanding must precede advice. The wife wanted to be understood. And there are some things that happen in our lives and in our past that are so awful that really there's no fixing that can make it better. But what can make it better is understanding. What can make it better is when our spouse, the person we love the most in this world, can empathize and understand our feelings. And the husband demonstrated the ability to do so. So wives, if your husband is the Bob the Builder, don't feel like you need to retract or walk away from these conversations that he's just going to try to fix you. Instead, give him the right tools to engage in this conversation with you. You might ask him the question, hey, thank you for the solutions and the advice that you're giving me. But first, could you help me put words? Could you help me find a language to express my feelings? Because I'm having a hard time doing that myself. Oftentimes, I'll say that to Renee. I said, Renee, I'm such in a bad mood, and I don't even know why. And Renee will start shouting, well, could it be because of this? Could it be because of this? He's trying to understand before offering advice. Husbands, this is what you must do. I find it amazing that sometimes we give husbands a bad rap. Like, they're checked out, they have no idea what's going on, but actually they're very perceptive. They're scared of high emotions. Truly, sometimes they run away from high emotions, but in the right environment, they're actually very aware. In fact, I had a husband and wife, and I shared this story with you before, but we were doing a questionnaire in the Abundant Marriage course. And it was asking each other, what is my biggest fear? And so the wife would ask the husband and he would answer and vice versa. Sort of, honey, wife, what is my biggest fear? And husband, what do you believe is my biggest fear? And the husband goes to the wife and he says, well, I believe that your biggest fear is that your father would die before you ever truly forgave him. Before you guys ever rekindled your relationship. And this wife starts to sob. She gets very upset. She actually leaves. And she's giving a very superficial answer, but the husband really went to the root in demonstrating to her that he knew what was her biggest fear. So much so that he knew more than she knew. When this question was going back and forth, she thought, well, I'm not really afraid of anything. I'm afraid of insects, and I'm kind of afraid of hiking and finding something like scary movies, and very superficial. And the husband went to the heart of the matter. And although she was upset, although in that moment she felt blindsided, later she says, wow, he knew me better than I know myself. And so again, if you have the Bob the Builder husband, this is the husband who attempts to fix problems before understanding the full story. And I know it's frustrating, and I know it's annoying, and I know you'd want him to just listen. But again, wives, don't leave the situation. Don't feel like you can't speak to him. Will he still try to fix things? Yes, he was created to fix things. But what you and I will do, I don't want to tell Renee, you're not going to fix my problems, shut up, just listen. I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give him the right tool to engage in this conversation. I'm going to give him the tool of empathy. The tool of empathy. And how am I going to do that? By asking him, do you think you could describe to me how you think I'm feeling right now? Help me solve this problem. First, let's figure out how I'm feeling, and then together we can find solutions to this problem. Hand your husband the right tool so that he can fix the problem. Let him be Bob the Builder. But maybe instead of a hammer, he's going to need a screwdriver. Maybe instead of a screwdriver, he's going to need a saw. Find the tool. The tool is empathy. All right, very good. For those coming in, welcome, welcome, welcome. If you have any questions, or maybe if you're saying, oh, my husband is the Bob the Builder husband, write it down. Husband number 1. We are talking about the 4 types of husbands. And the goal today is for you to identify your husband, and then I am going to give you specific ways that you are going to help your husband become the man God intended him to be, the man of your dreams, okay? Who wouldn't want to have a husband like Jesus, okay? So Bob the Builder attempts to fix problems before understanding the full story. What's husband number 2? Husband number 2 is the track star. What do I mean by the track star? Oh man, he's the husband that runs away from conflict. Anytime emotions get high, he is out the door. And if he doesn't physically remove himself, he will check out emotionally. He will check out mentally. When you speak to him, it seems very much like you are speaking to a wall. We can use the word stonewalling, where again, you're speaking, things are just going over his head. He's saying, yeah, okay, but you know very well that it's going through one ear and out the other. Husbands who are the track star, who avoids conflict at all costs. They have the appearance that they're listening. They have the appearance that they're allowing you to influence, but they're not. And usually, they will tell you one thing in your face and then do something else behind your back. Why? Because they want to avoid conflict at all costs, even if it means they are avoiding a temporary, momentary conflict and just creating bigger problems for them in the future. But they think, if I can just escape the problem now, praise God. Okay? So oftentimes they'll do that. They'll tell you something. Okay, yeah, honey, we'll go there. Or we'll go to that date. Or we'll go to that movie. Okay, I'll call your mother. And yeah, I'll settle the accounts. And he'll tell you what you want to hear in the moment. But then later, he does the complete opposite. Okay? In fact, I was reading a book. It's called The Dance of Connection, and it was a really great book. And then the author shares a story about her father, and she shares the story of how her father wanted to always please her mother and her grandmother. And one time they go to visit the grandmother, and I can't remember where it was. Let's pretend it was California, okay? So the family lives in Chicago. They go visit the grandma in California, and the grandma desperately wants the family to move close to her. And so she goes to her son, the author's father, and says, son, I want you to look for jobs in the area because I want you to move here with your family. And so the wife looks to the husband and goes, absolutely not. We are not moving to California. We are not moving close to your mother. Absolutely not. But the father, because he doesn't want to upset his mother, says, okay, Mom, yeah. I'm going to look for a job. And you know what he does? He gets dressed every single morning as though he's going to go to job interviews. He gets dressed, right? This is back in the good old days. He gets all dressed up and he says, all right, bye. I'm going to go look for a job. And he leaves. But where he went was not to look at jobs because he was not going to move to California. But he didn't want to tell his mom, hey, Mom, we're not moving to California. He wanted to please his mom and he wanted to please his wife. And so what he would do is he would dress up and he would go sit all in suit at the park and just read the newspaper. So he would come home around the evening time. Look, Mom, I looked all day, couldn't find a job. He lied. Why? To avoid conflict. But after, what do you think? When the mother found out, it only created greater conflict. I think we have a question here. I think almost every husband hates conflicts more when the wife cries. Yeah, absolutely, right? This is going back to sort of the Bob the Builder husband. high emotions kind of are scary to husbands, and oftentimes husbands will need to learn how to deal with high emotions. Also can be the case with the track star husband. The track star husband, the husband who's running away from conflict, it could be for two reasons. Number one, because maybe in that moment, he sees high emotions and he thinks, I can't solve this. Oftentimes the track star husband comes from the Bob the Builder husband. All of his attempts to solve the problem were unsuccessful, and so what does he do? Now he just checks out. He says, I can't fix this. I feel so inept. I feel like such a failure. I feel like I can't do my job to protect my wife, and so he checks out. It's not because he's a bad guy, but he checks out. And oftentimes these husbands who become the track star husband, maybe they become or maybe they always were, it then becomes sort of the workaholic. Right? The husband who leaves too early and comes home too late because he doesn't know how to solve the conflict in the house. He doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know what to say. He doesn't know how to solve the problem. And any man who cannot solve a problem will feel like less of a man. I can assure you that. I see it all the time. The husband who never wants to talk, he wants to run away. He's the track star husband. You feel like you're talking to the wall. Maybe your husband is the track star husband who tells you what you want to hear, but then later does something completely different behind your back. So either he became the track star husband, again, because he was the Bob the Builder and could not fix the problem, could not handle the situation, and so what does he do? He puts all of his efforts in his work. He becomes a workaholic. Or maybe he does it in a more, being a workaholic is going to bring harm to the family, but maybe he numbs himself out through pornography, or maybe through alcohol. You fill in the blank. When he feels like he is not enough, when he feels like he is not doing his job as a man, as the provider of the house, he will check out. Or possibility number two is he grew up in a family that did not model good conflict resolution. You know how many times husbands will say, Amanda, I can't get into an argument, or I don't want to go into conflict because this could be the end of my marriage. This could be divorce. And I said, well, what do you mean? He says, well, every time my family would have a disagreement or an argument with each other, that relationship was strained. That relationship was ruined. Never, he says, these husbands have told me, never have I been able to have a conflict or a disagreement or an argument and it ended in connection and intimacy and closeness. And if you've been here long enough, you know that I am a firm believer, I am a true believer that conflict, if we go about it in the correct way, that it can lead to greater intimacy, greater connection in our marriages. And these husbands are thinking, how? I've never seen that. It's never been modeled to me. So the track star husband can also see conflict as a thing that's going to break their relationship, ruin their relationship, and not bring them closer together, which is why these things need to be learned. The awesome thing is this. Women, you have more emotional intelligence. Again, what is that? The ability to speak about your emotions, handle your emotions, understand the emotions of others than your husband, than men do in general. That being said, we can learn emotional intelligence. It's not just if you're born with it, great. If not, sucks to suck. No, it's not that. You can learn it. You can cultivate it. And so wives, we can help our husbands become more emotionally intelligent. Now, the track star husband who runs away, what we cannot do as wives is use two very dangerous things, which is contempt and criticism. When you criticize your husband, it's when you go after his character. So if I say something like, you never want to solve any problems. You always run away. You always and you never. These general terms that I come after his character. You are so selfish. You are so stubborn. You only think about yourself. You're just like your father. When we come and criticize our husbands, when we attack their character, guess what they're going to do? They're most likely going to defend themselves. No, I'm not. And then they're going to defend themselves in such and such way. We cannot come with criticism. We need to come explaining and describing our feelings so that it can create in him the ability to understand and to turn on emotional intelligence. The other thing that often happens with wives who have track star husbands is that they will use contempt. What is contempt? Well, when you speak with contempt with your husband, you're kind of just being mean and nasty. And so this can look like, you're not a man. Oh man, you tell your husband you're not a man, what do you think he's going to do? He's going to stonewall you. He's going to ignore you. He's going to check out, because in this moment now he's feeling overwhelmed. He's feeling completely flooded in his emotions. And he's going to run. He's either going to physically remove himself, and then you're going to be shouting, you see, you're not a man, you run away, stay here and talk to me, blah, 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 blah. Or he's just going to look at you and just blank stare. When you use contempt, you might roll your eyes, you might use sarcasm, you might mock, you might even curse. This is not the way to do it, not the way to do it. And now, if you do use contempt and you do use criticism, let's imagine that your husband was a bronze medal winner as a track star, the Olympic bronze medal winner. If you use contempt and you use criticism, you've just guaranteed him a gold medal, because that boy will run and head for the hills. Now, I'm going to share with you a little story. We can laugh about it now, but it wasn't a laughing matter when it happened. But there was this wife, and I won't have time to get into all the details, but she found out that her husband was cheating. Okay? And so what she does when she finds out is she grabs a stick and she starts to hit him. She starts to beat him with the stick. And I mean, he's just, I don't know if he was shocked that she was doing this, but he sort of just gets in fetal position and he just takes it. And she's beating him and she's crying and she's upset, and it wasn't a good thing. And so, they come in, we start working, we start figuring out the situation of all the things that are happening. Well, he is very much the track star husband. They were unable to resolve this conflict because every time it was brought up, he would head for the hills. He'd either stonewall, he would defend himself, but most often he would just shut down because he felt so overwhelmed, he felt so flooded. And then she told me throughout our time together that she always sort of kept the stick, the one that she beat him upside the head with when she found out he was cheating, that she always just kept it in her room. And I said, well, what do you mean? She says, well, I keep it in the room as sort of a reminder so he never forgets that he cheated, and that if he does it again, I'm going to beat him with the stick again. I said, man. And the husband, now he's looking like scared. And I said, let me ask you something. Are you afraid of your wife? And he said, are you kidding me? Yeah, she beat me upside the head with a stick. Of course I'm scared of this woman. He was scared of her. He was scared. Now, here's the thing. The wife wanted to connect through conflict with him. She wanted to use conflict as an opportunity to create greater intimacy, to create greater connection. However, this wasn't happening in the marriage. You know why? Because the husband felt scared. He did not feel safe. If you missed the video that we did, I think it was 2 weeks ago, 2 Thursdays ago, it's there on the IGTV. You have to listen to it. Why am I having a hard time connecting? I think the title is something like that. Why can't I connect? And I talked there extensively about our basic human needs to connect, but also our need for safety. And because the husband did not feel safe in his relationship, he didn't feel physically safe, right? There are 3 types of safety. We need to feel physically safe, we need to feel emotionally safe, and we need to feel relationally safe, to be able to speak things out, to speak fully without judgment, without feeling like the other person is going to just walk out. We need to feel safe that this love, that our marriage is not conditional, but it's unconditional. Now, unconditional doesn't mean that you can do whatever the heck you want. No, unconditional and the idea that if something is broke, we are going to fix this. We are a team. We're doing this together. And so it just dawned on me. I said, the reason your husband cannot connect, even though he wants to, through conflict, is because he does not feel safe in this relationship. And she thought, oh my goodness, I got it. So her greatest need was connection. Even though we have these two needs, connection and safety, depending on where we grew up or how we grew up, one will be more important than the other to us. Not that they're both not important, they both are. But again, if I don't, see, right now I'm thirsty. You know what I keep thinking about as I'm talking to you is, for the love of God, Renee, please give me water. So now he's going to go. So see, my great need in this moment is the need for water. And until my thirst is quenched, I'm still going to have this need, right? And Renee is now jumping over the bed to get me water. Thank you. I mean, look at the size of this thing. Sorry, but this is my great need right now. It's not to do this, but to drink. All right, I got a big gulp. Is this going to mess you up if I put it there? Okay. Okay, so this husband, his greatest need was safety. And because he did not feel safe, because every night he would walk into his room and he'd look at the stick that he got beat, right? Because he didn't feel safe, he was having a hard time connecting because conflict was like, oh my goodness, oh my goodness, oh my goodness, I'm going to get beat with the stick. As we start talking, he starts to become more vulnerable, and the wife is thinking, oh man, why does he not feel safe? In what way did he not feel safe growing up? Remember, because it's a need that we all have, and because safety was such a big, she started to ask him about his childhood. And she found out that he grew up in a very toxic, very abusive home. And the wife was treating him very much the way that his mother treated him, with abuse, with cursing, with yelling. And she starts to break down. She starts to cry. And so she goes to the room, she gets the stick, and she says, we're throwing this stick out. I don't want you to be afraid of me. I don't want to use fear, control, and manipulation because this is all you've known since you were a little boy. I want to show you truth and love. And I am going to believe that you can be the best version of yourself. And we are in this together. She starts to affirm him and affirm him and affirm. He starts to sob, and guess what? The track star husband was no longer the track star husband. Why? Because the wife created an environment of safety where they were better able to connect. And through connection, she was able to point out the positive qualities in him, in their marriage. And honestly, the prophecy that she sort of did over his life that I believe in you. And I don't need to use fear, control, and manipulation. And I believe that, you've repented from this. And she affirmed him in such a way that he became all the good stuff that she believed he could be. Isn't that amazing? If you're just joining us now, we talked about the Bob the Builder husband. We just talked about the track star husband, the one who runs away from conflict, the one who does not speak and talk in arguments. And now we're going to husband number 3, the professor. The professor. This is the husband that always has a lecture ready whenever something has gone wrong. Some of the characteristics of the professor, this is the husband who's always pointing out the errors. He's consistently saying, the food was great, but a little bit more salt would have made it much better. This husband is inconsistent, he's unsatisfied, and he is the backseat driver, right? You should have turned here, you should have not done that, this could have been better, but here, and this, that. This husband, although he acts like he knows everything, his biggest fear is to be found out. He's very intelligent, very charismatic, holds himself well, speaks in a way that he causes others to listen, but deep down he is scared to be found out. Usually these husbands tend to be older, maybe they're more successful, and by successful I mean maybe they're bringing more of the money into the house, they have a high position, and usually, because again, in Abundant Marriage, we deal a lot with the 5 C's of marriage, and we deal with the Christian faith. And so a lot of times these husbands, they just know more about Scripture than their wives, okay? So they very much have this sort of, this spirituality, this vibe, this I know more, almost like a holier than thou. But it's only externally, because inside they feel like they're going to be found out. They feel very inconsistent, unsatisfied, and very unsure of themselves. But here's the thing with the professor. The professor, while he's telling his wife all the things that she should be doing differently, that she's not amounting or this or that, usually the advice that he gives is not the advice that he follows. Did you catch that? Don't miss it. The advice that he gives is not the advice that he follows. And so he might be giving, as I had a recent relationship, he was upset that his wife was not taking care of herself physically, right? He says, oh, you don't work out and you eat so unhealthy and you're sort of letting yourself go, and after the kids you just don't care about anymore, and I'm not calling you fat or anything, but I just wish you would take better care of your body, and da-da-da-da-da. Well, this same husband, she looks at him and she's like, are you kidding me? He's like, you're not working out. And you eat worse than I do. You see, here's the professor. He knows what he should be doing. He's really good at telling his wife what she should be doing, and telling everyone else for that matter. But he isn't doing it himself. He's inconsistent. And oftentimes, this is very much how we are as Christians. Think about it. An author that I really like, her name is Ellen White, and she says that the greatest dangers, the greatest harms seen with the church is not the open rebels. It's not the atheists. It's not those who loudly proclaim that they hate God, hate Jesus. It's not those. Our greatest problem is inconsistent Christians. Christians who say with their mouths but live completely different from their words. Christians who, while their lips confess God, their hearts are completely away from God. And so oftentimes the professor, he's not a bad husband. He's very smart. He knows a lot. But the knowledge, the information has not become wisdom, meaning the knowledge has not been put to practice. That's wisdom. It's knowing and then doing, and simply giving people lectures and telling people how they should live their lives. It's not going to make people do it. The way in which we can do that is by living through our behaviors. And so, wives, if you have the professor as a husband, where you yourself feel, he knows more. You feel like he knows maybe more scripturally, he knows more intellectually, he's smart, maybe he reads more, whatever, for whatever reason, he's more affluent. He grew up in a family where books were easily accessible and maybe yours wasn't. Maybe he works all day long and his profession, he's constantly surrounded by all of these people who are so smart and this and that, and maybe, you stay home with the kids. Whatever the case may be, the way to approach the professor husband is not through words. Most times the professor, they will not listen to what you have to say. And this is tough, okay? Because when I have the professor's husbands as clients, oftentimes we go head to head. Because he'll pull out, well, I read, well, I saw. And it's really hard with these husbands because they're not very teachable. They're not very humble. Oftentimes they can be a little arrogant. But again, it's not because they're bad people, but it's because inside there's a little boy who's scared that he is going to be found out. A little boy who doesn't feel as smart as he makes himself to be. This is the professor husband. And so we have to take care of this. Wives, we have to pay attention to this. Don't be so offended. And I know it's frustrating. Don't be so offended by what appears to be his arrogance. Try to dig deep. That's just superficial. That's the symptom. Go to the root. And so wives, what are you going to do? If you go back and forth with him and like a verbal match, you're going to lose, because he's probably going to say all these fancy words. He's going to pull up all the scriptures, and he's going to make you feel stupid. Do not go there with the professor husband. But what you will do, wives, is what 1 Peter 3:1 says. It says this, talking about husbands and wives. It says, even if they refuse to believe the word. Okay, and here the word talking about the word of God. But now let's bring it to what we're talking about here. Even if he refuses to believe what you are saying to him, even if he doesn't listen to you or anyone for that matter, look at what 1 Peter 3:1 says. they will be won over without words by the behavior of their wives. Don't get into a talking match, a yelling match, a research match, a I know more than you match. Don't do it. You will lose. You need to be consistent through your behaviors, through your actions. He cannot argue with your consistent Christianity. He cannot argue with your character. He can argue with your words, but he cannot argue with your lifestyle. And so wives, if you have the professor as a husband, again, don't be so offended. And I know easier said than done, okay? Don't be so intimidated. I'll say that. Don't be so intimidated by his appearance of I know so much, of intellect, of fancy words. Don't be intimidated by that. There is a little boy behind this man who's fronting all of this appearance. Okay? And the biggest thing that he's afraid of is that you are going to find this out and that you're going to leave him. That you're going to find this out and you're not going to want to be with him. But he needs to know that that is not true. And so wives, have a consistent character. Win him over, not with your words, not with your fancy arguments. Win him over with the influence of your character. This is exactly what Jesus does. You know, when Jesus meets Nicodemus, look, Nicodemus would be the professor of a husband, okay? He comes to Jesus, he comes in the middle of the night because, look, he doesn't want anyone to know. He thinks it's beneath him to meet Jesus. I mean, who is Jesus? Jesus doesn't have fancy clothes. He's walking around maybe barefoot. You know, a lot of the Pharisees and the Sanhedrins at the time aren't giving him the time of day. And so Nicodemus is like saying, like, listen, I am like high authority here. I am like the elect. I'm the cream of the top. And people find out that I'm trying to talk to Jesus, it's not going to go very well. So he goes in the middle of the night. But Jesus, ever so loving, ever so gracious, ever so humble, meets Nicodemus. And Nicodemus starts to ask Jesus all these questions, this and this. He tries to have like an intellectual debate. Who are you and who this and who that? And Nicodemus is saying, and Jesus says, Nicodemus, listen. Until you are born again, you will not understand my mission. And Nicodemus now, he tends to be fresh, right? He's sassy. Well, what do you mean born again? A grown man? What am I supposed to do? Go back into my mother's belly? And Jesus, you know what I'm talking about. Spiritual things are spiritually discerned, Nicodemus. You have no business questioning me about my mission until you have a new heart. You don't need more information, Nicodemus. You don't need more knowledge. You need wisdom. You need to put these things into practice. You need heart transformation. You need to be born again. You don't need to read another book. And so wives, if you have the professor as husbands, you need to approach it the way Jesus did. Jesus went after the heart of Nicodemus, not the brain of Nicodemus. Do you follow, wives? Do you follow? And you will do this with the help of Jesus. Go after the professor's heart. Stop the lectures. Stop the arguments. Go after his heart. And I can tell you this. You know, maybe oftentimes in my marriage, if wives can at times be husband types, I think in my marriage I could say that in my pride, in my cockiness, in my arrogance, in my ability to know, I know a lot about Scripture, right? And oftentimes I could see in the past in my relationship that I was the professor in my relationship with Renee. And Renee, he never did it. And a lot of the things that I'm telling you now are things that we lived in our marriage and that we've had victory over them. And why? Because Renee did exactly what I'm telling you. He didn't get into a scriptural war with me. He probably would have lost that. But he went after my heart, and there he won. He was a consistent Christian. And although I couldn't explain it, although I couldn't describe it, he started to bring down my walls and allowed me to show him who I really was. Remember, the professor is scared. They're hiding. But Renee saw through the depths of my soul. He saw through my heart. He brought down the walls. And then this is the final husband. And this is what I believe we all can be. the final husband is the sower. So remember, we had the Bob the Builder, we had the track star, we had the professor, and now we have the sower. And this is God's desire. The Bible says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not harm you, to give you hope and to give you a future." And your future will have an abundant marriage if your husband becomes the sower. But he's not going to do it on his own. Wives, we need to cooperate. We need to help. The Bible says that Eve was the helpmate to Adam. It wasn't that she was less than him. She walked alongside him. They were partners. The same purpose, the same mission, the same desires, hand in hand, one helping the other. Where Renee is weak, I am strong. When I am weak, Renee is strong. We come together, not to complete each other. We are complete in Christ, but to complement each other. And so, what is the sower? The husband who is the sower is the husband who is teachable, who accepts influence, one who is willing to learn. Is he a perfect husband? Absolutely not. In no way, shape, or form is he the perfect husband. But he is a husband that is willing to learn, who doesn't believe that he is the knower and the owner of all truth. A husband who is willing to be vulnerable, to let down his walls. A husband who allows you to see him cry and to say, "I feel like a fraud." That lets you know when he did a bad business transaction. That tells you not often what you want to hear, but what you need to hear. Who doesn't pretend to be something in front of you and then something else. No, a husband who is consistent. The sower is the husband who has found Jesus and by beholding him becomes transformed in his image. Remember Saul before he became Paul? Oh man, Saul had it all wrong. He was persecuting the Christians and thinking he was doing the mission of God. But when Saul realizes that he was wrong, he became teachable. He accepts influence and his life would never again be the same. Husband, if you're watching me, you might be the Bob the Builder. You might be the track star. Heck, you might be the professor. But you have the opportunity to be the sower. And wives, if you're watching this video all alone, if your husband is Bob the Builder, the track star, or the professor, you can help him become the sower. How? You and I will reap what we sow. I'm going to say that again. You and I, we will reap what we sow. Whatever you plant, you will reap. The seeds that you put in the dirt, you will pick a harvest. If you put there collard seeds, you will have collard greens. If you plant orange seeds, you will have an orange tree, and so on and so forth. Wives, start to plant truth and love in the heart of your husband. Cultivate the soil. Affirm him. Tell him not the mistakes, not who he was, but who he can be. I love a quote that says this: Satan knows our name and calls us by our sin, but God knows our sin and calls us by our name. Be what Ananias was to Paul. Be that to your husband. Remember Ananias? He's the one that God chose to go to Paul. He felt depressed. He felt lonely. He felt like he had it all wrong. He felt like a failure. And Ananias goes there and he says, Paul, you are chosen by God. Your story does not end here. You are forgiven. Here's grace. Here's mercy. And go on because God has chosen you. This is what we need to do, wives, to our husbands. Inject this man, not with what the world is telling he is, not with what his failed transaction is telling him he is, not even with what he is telling himself he is. You tell your husband what God says that he is. He is a leader. He's a priest. He's the one chosen by God to display the character of Jesus, to be the father figure in your home. Tell him truth, but tell him in love. And husbands, if you're watching, you need to start planting good seeds. But you need to understand that in order for you to be the sower, husbands, if you are going to be the type of husband that is the sower, you will not be able to do it alone. This is not going to be dependent on your intelligence, on your IQ. It's not going to be dependent on your the professional achievements that you acquired, your finances, on your ability to have smooth talk. No. This is only made possible with Jesus Christ. Because you might plant, but without the sun and the water that is provided by God, you will not cultivate anything. The harvest will not come. And so husbands, you do your part. You cooperate with God. You look there at the gifts of the Spirit. Love, joy, peace, patience, goodness, kindness, gentleness, self-control. You look and you start planting. You start sowing all of these good seeds, knowing that without the help of God, without the water and without the soil, these seeds won't grow. So you hand over your heart. You hand over your mind, your abilities, your talents to Jesus. And just wait and see the type of husband that you will become. You will become the sower. And wives, now that you've seen the husband types and you're thinking, oh man, to have a husband that is the sower, that would be a dream. I told you that I would today describe, show you the different types of husbands so that you can identify the type that you have. And that you would be able to then, with the help of God, help your husband become your dream husband, the man that God intended him to be. And so you're thinking, okay, well, I want him to be the sower. Well, yeah, that's who I want Renee to be. I want him to be the sower. Wives, your husband will become an answer to your prayers. You will hold hands. You will sleep with a miracle. So now you know what to do. If your husband's the Bob the Builder, if he tries to fix things before he has a full understanding, if he's the track star, he runs away from conflict, if he's the professor and he has a lecture ready to give, you know exactly now what you need to do to help your husband transition himself to become the sower. Anyways, that's what I have for you here today. I hope it was helpful. I hope you identify your husband, and I hope you will implement these tools. Remember, we can't just be hearers. We have to be doers. So go for it, ladies. Cooperate with God and help your husband become the man that God desires him to be. And husbands, if you're watching me, I believe in you. You can do it. God created you as a man for a reason. You are the leader of the pack. You are chosen to lead your wife, to lead your family, to lead your children. I know you might not feel it. I know you might feel like a fraud. I know you might feel like, there's problems that I can handle. All things are possible to those who believe. And what seems impossible to man becomes possible with the help of God. So cling to him. Wrestle with him, boys. Hand over your heart like Nicodemus. Meet him even if it has to be in the dark. He doesn't care. Meet Jesus. Not for an intellectual discussion or debate. Meet him because he will grab your heart. He won't even fix it. He will give you a heart transplant. And the heart transplant will be his character. I'll see you guys next week, Thursday at 8 p.m.